So something that people say to me is, Scott, you're definitely sharing about non-duality in a different way. And so then that brings up questions for people, good practice questions. But I want to say that there's no substitute for actually doing KI. These insights that you've seen me share, to the extent that they're unique or different, or you're resonating with them that I've shared in the last 3 years, those came about only, only from direct experience and KI. I never would have been able to share any of this without that direct experience. It would have been all conjecture, but this is direct experience because I've done the work. So if you really want the answers to your questions, do the work, and the answers they come about in the real way. They're true insights and realizations. And when you have an insight or realization, it's unmistakable and kind of irrevocable. You've seen it, you know. And once you've seen it, you can't unsee that, and that's powerful. And so, if you don't do the work of KI and you just ask the questions, what you're getting is like secondhand knowledge from me. And secondhand knowledge isn't necessarily that transformative. It can definitely help as you hear things. You might feel things shifting as you're just listening to me, but nothing compared to the what would happen if you actually did the work. So again, I'll keep answering them. Remember, it's secondhand knowledge. It's helpful as context, but until you experience it directly, the real answers don't come. Once you start doing the work directly, you actually will not really need to ask me any of these questions anymore. So people in the members area, they generally don't ask too many context questions because they're doing the work and they get the insights. The insights provide that understanding of what's going on here. So their questions tend to be focused on practice questions. It's how to, in other words. Uh, but you can send any questions you want. So let me just go to YouTube and see if you guys have asked anything in the last. Mm, mm. Oh, here it is. Here's a question. Oh, I didn't see this one. Well, it was here yesterday from free5663 screen name. Scott, I wanted to comment on the video you did a few days ago when you took us through a repression practice. Video is no longer here. You touched on it again in this video, the one they're commenting on. When you asked us, rev up the question, can I fully be myself with my family? Not much was coming up while going through the practice, even though I tried revving it up. It came up hours later in my sleep. Wham! Exclamation point. It was like it was a movie of so many life experiences from when I was a child. Memories I had long ago buried and forgotten came into consciousness. The feelings of burning rage were so intense. I found myself role playing, telling everyone that hurt me exactly how I felt. Essentially, I was telling them off, laughing out loud. Gosh, it felt good. It would be more satisfying to be able to do this in real life. I felt drained and emotionally hungover after it. Scott, I want to let you know that in my experience, though I couldn't stay with the revving up practice, the repressed memories surfaced hours later. Well, there's not a question, but it kind of is. Um, that definitely happens with KI repression work. You could be like I would be working with anger repression inquiry, and it's like nothing would happen, or just a little bit of the pain itself would go down. But then, like 3 days later, rage. Um, but that was actually really well, let me say this. The more skillful I became and we became with it, a few things we started noticing. Um, so here to this person, I when I read your comment, I can't tell whether you've learned third dimension KI yet. Because if you're still in that first or second dimension practice, remember, first dimension is just be with what is, whatever happens to arise. Second dimension is like starting to do some inquiry to prompt up things that are not arising, like rage that is buried, for example. But it's hard to develop, it's hard to bring up rage, buried rage and anger in first and second dimension practice. So my question is, are you doing third dimension? Because even though I like what you're doing, it could be more skillful. In other words, what I've learned is like you say that you go express your anger or whatever. Um, our conditioning doesn't allow us to express beyond the point at which feels safe for our conditioning, even when you're alone. I've sat in session with people before, and even though it's a safe space where they know that I'm not going to judge them if they yell and scream, when they start to yell and scream, you could tell that their conditioning just doesn't allow it. It's just like, yeah, mom, I'm angry. I'm angry at you, mom. See? So, because it's repressed. So, what our tools are doing is it's bringing up the mind and body connection in the right form. It's not, with the right attitude. And we're doing it in a certain way. So, frankly, we are not really having people just kicking and screaming and yelling and biting pillows. That happens. But we're doing something more skillful than that. We're making that the mechanism of holding back the rage conscious, and that's what's really dissolving energy. So so yes, the repressed emotions can surface later, but I just want to say to this person, look, and to everyone out there, here I am talking about anger repression, other repression, and you're thinking about the subject and you're maybe trying to access it. But what I'm telling you is we've got tools that will just bring that fully forward. Like you can see it all, the conditioning. And so it'll make it more skillful, frankly, I think. And so the path won't take as long either. Because another thing that tells me is like, it's good that you saw the memories. But my question is, were you aware of the repression and trauma commands running? That's the big secret sauce for KI. In all sorts of spirituality, people see images and feel energy in different ways. What we're doing is we're making the actual mechanism, the programming of that repression mechanism conscious. So essentially, if you're not hearing in your awareness a repetitive sort of command to hold back anger or hold back something, if you're not hearing that like that, chances are it's still not skillful enough with regard to KI standards to truly move this energy skillfully. You're going to move energy, you already are, but I'm saying is we can help you with that. In some ways the way that you're doing it is like pre-KI, it feels like, unless you just left that part out, that you actually are working with the mechanism of the repression. You're not just screaming and hollering and because your conditioning won't allow you to go beyond a certain point when you try to express that. This is why increase help. It helps you go beyond that point of repression to release that energy. Okay, let's see what else we got. Yep. Lawrence, this is my last question, I think. It seems even once we shine the light on what's repressed without bypassing, the body can and does still contract regularly, just because that habit has become wired in us. Yes. So of course we don't want to keep feeling that which we've seen and felt over and over again and we've dealt with. The core issue is indeed driving everything, and I see that. I'm not bypassing this cause. Yet the driver continues to drive. What the fuck is that? Survival. One of the reasons I think that the repression and the suppression has and trauma has been bypassed is because we don't understand kind of the nature of the practice that we have to do to get to it, right? And that's that third dimension KI. We've developed specific practices that are skillfully targeted towards it. That's the key difference. And you know that, Lawrence, because you do that work. So I'm kind of saying it for everyone else. Um, but the point about the habit, one of the reasons I think the bypass has gone on for so long for so many people is they don't understand the nature of the habit with regard to repression and trauma. But you understand it with regard to ego, basically, right? So even if you haven't done like deep repression and trauma work, you know that the nature of the ego activity is to sort of come back and, continue to believe that you're not good enough or something or some other story, and that you have to be with that as that comes up. Just that layer, not the deep. We'll talk about the deep repression in a second, the deeply held stuff. I'm talking about the low hanging fruit that comes up in awareness from time to time for us throughout the day. Um, that reoccurrence of some of those stories is coming from that ego activity that's trying to get you to survive emotionally and psychologically. So it brings back your stories to make sure that you know you're a separate self and you continue to suffer and stay that separate self to survive as that separate self. So then it makes sense then, see, that the trauma and the repression that we're talking about now is going to do the same thing because it's core programming of the ego. It's going to have that same habitual contracting back. But the reason I think the bypass is happening is because this is an area of repression, whereas other triggers aren't necessarily an area of repression. The repression is a trauma response, so it has to happen and continue happening continuously to protect you. It has a very strong recurrence factor, repression. And this is the part of the bypass is because like on a meditation mat, someone will sort of maybe release some of that anger in some way, but they don't understand how the habit works of repressing. So they might have a false confidence to think, well, I've released anger around dad, but this is a habit. So as soon as you get back around dad or other people in which the habit likes to come forth, it will come forth and it will sort of re solidify the contraction a little bit to protect you. So the conditioning says. So you have to meet repression regularly to meet the contracting back. You have to understand that that's what's happening. Because if you don't understand it, again, you could easily just keep bypassing it. Just that's what I'm saying. Our primary repression drives us on the healing path. As soon as we get close to feeling something that we've avoided all of our life, we tend to default out of that. And instead of feeling it and expressing it, we default to like, I'm not good enough, false version of ourselves, right? Which is how we felt as children. If we couldn't be ourselves, false version of self comes up. You see that? That's all connected to that because the deficiency story is connected to the repression. Can't be myself, have to be a false version of myself. All of that is survival. This is why we keep seeing the deficiency story come back because this is how you have to see yourself and have had to see yourself in order to survive. You need the identity for safety or some other reason on an unconscious level. And you need the repression for safety on an unconscious level. And that's survival. So, nowhere in that mix should there be any thought that you're going to do some process and immediately resolve all your repression, your habitual lifetime routine of repressing is not going to undo itself really quickly. that's contributing to the bypass because people don't understand you really do have to process that. You can't just like go to a retreat and expect like, boom, yep, it's all over now. That can happen, but it's very rare. So it's a regular practice. You take into consideration that it must contract back because it's a habit of survival. And that's how you meet it every day. And by meeting it every day, you can see that transmute. Yes. Yeah, I think that answers it. Thank you, Lawrence. And Lawrence knows all this. He's in training. But so I kind of said it for everyone else. Mm. Okay, so here's my last question from Sean McLaren. Sean says, finally, someone voices what I feel about all the massive grief for having stumbled at a potential spiritual awakening almost 30 years ago. I wish someone had been there for me. It would have led to a much more extraordinary life for me and those around me. Instead, I sunk into an intense spiritual depression, escaped from the feelings with ruminative fantasies about a more enlightened childhood, and ground my teeth, enamel off. He ground his enamel off. I had been exposed then to Krishnamurti's teachings, as well as co-counseling. I knew I was being shown the truth, but it was like being chained in front of the door to paradise. With the co-counseling, I knew a good method to discharge repressed, distressed patterns, but it was limited to a few hours a week. I could, oh, by the way, yeah, you have to do repression work regularly. This whole thing about going to a therapist once a week or a facilitator once a week, it's a lifelong habit that's going on every day. You have to meet that regularly. Definitely. That's why we're showing people how to do the work instead of making them dependent on teachers and facilitators and therapists. Empower yourself to do the work regularly. Unravel the repression. Don't give your power away to everybody all the time. They can't help you. They can help you like with skill and guidance, but it's all you. You've got to do that work. Nobody can do it for you. Um so So he's saying if someone at the time had shown me the way to sit with and be accepting of the intensely somatic and yucky emotions with an al, uh, alchemical, why can't I say that? Alchemical meditation practice, I would have had the magic key I needed. Some modification happened, but regretfully, I spent another 3 decades bypassing and increasingly succumbing to addictions. This is actually common. I've been telling you this. These are the stories that I hear much more than I hear the stories that somebody had an awakening experience and it was just fully embodied and they lived in bliss forever. This is the majority of people right here. And if nobody, teachers don't tell you that. So that's why you could feel there's something wrong with you. Like if some shit is happening for you and your teacher doesn't explain that shit happens for a lot of people, then it makes you feel like there's something wrong with you. Well, I'm here to tell you that you're actually in the majority. So there's nothing wrong with you. This is just part of the process. uh, the self-centeredness now has plenty of evidence to hang on to its narrative. It is hard not to feel like one got burned. Lots of repressed anger. Father, why have you forsaken me? I mean, I think you answered the question in your question. You gave yourself the own answer, but I'll just reiterate a few things here. Well, Sean, that's exactly why I get on here every day, even if it gets old, even if people get tired of hearing it, because nobody said this to me. And even if somebody would have said it to me, Sean, I might not have been at a place where I could really hear it because it's the realm of unconsciousness. And so, who wants to believe it? Like that there's a bunch of shit that you miss. Um, but I wish that someone had been there for me too. So this is why I get on here every day, is to keep saying the same things over and over again so that maybe some of you will catch it and you don't have to go down the big bypass, the great non-dual bypass. You can actually catch it now. Um, yeah. But again, this is just like so many people that I've met before. And my answer is just, and again, it sounds like I'm just trying to promote KI. I am, absolutely. But it's not all about money. I like to pay my bills. But what I'm saying to you is like, Sean, we've developed a members area in which we're supporting people in this work and teaching them the skill. So, I mean, I encourage you to try it. There's such blind spots in these areas. We really do need each other to kind of keep each other in check around this. Rebecca says, I know I've been avoiding your videos because they make me uncomfortable, but I listened today. Yeah, it made me uncomfortable too, this topic. I got triggered the first time someone suggested to me that my physical chronic pain, which was clearly on the MRI as spinal stenosis, was actually anger repression. Like, I didn't want to hear that. But it did provide hope. I was able to heal it. So, okay, here's my last one, I think. Scott, this is from Locky B. Scott, why can't I experience compassion for myself? My heart is full of hate. I go into this hate time and time again and only discover more pain and more hate. There's never any peace to be found here. I totally get it. There's a couple things I'm just going to say real quick. If hate or anger is that accessible to you, you might want to look at more vulnerable emotions like sadness or fear that you might have had to shove down in your family in order to survive. And therefore, the hatred or the anger is more comfortable and safer. Even though it's hurtful, it might be safer than sadness or vulnerable emotions. So if you find that if you have this much discernible hate in your body, it makes me want to say to you, just check into sadness or hurt repression, like where you've buried that. And what's more comfortable is just to be angry or hate people from your past. And then do sadness and hurt repression work, focus there, if that's the case. But the other thing is, regardless of where the repression, the primary repression is held in the body, the the hate, if it is there, here's the thing. Through the years, I kept hearing teachers say, just feel and allow everything. Feel so if you feel hatred, just allow it. But it doesn't work that way. By the virtue of this question, you're already learning that that first dimension stuff is not skillful with regard to like really deep emotions that are held on to. Just come down and feel it. Chances are you probably did that already. If you haven't, I would start there. Is when you're feeling the hate, if it's an actual emotion of hate that you're feeling, drop down and just let that be. And see if you can make that feeling stay just by feeling it. So, like bringing awareness to it and doing nothing else. And so, if you say, can I feel this? Can I make this stay just by feeling it? What it does is it takes the mind out of it because that's all you're doing is feeling it. And with the mind out of it, the resistance is out of it, a lot of it. And sometimes that can just shift, let that hate of that feeling just dissolve itself. But chances are that you've already done that and it's not working. And so now you've got this hate and it's just hanging around. Why is it hanging around? That's the next question. And now you know that by resting with it, it's not going to transmute. So you don't do that anymore. you want to pick up a different practice, basically KI, but come to the members area. And I've done vulnerability inquiry with you here several times on YouTube. What I would do is I would go to those videos where I'm doing vulnerability inquiry and just sit and reverse that. Like, I don't hate dad. And then just really watch the buried mental programming that's connected to that hate. Chances are you're not making the mind part of the mind body connection around the hate fully conscious. But with that reverse inquiry, it becomes fully conscious, and that helps to transmute that long held hate in the body. Just simple vulnerability inquiry where you just say, I don't hate him, and then just watch what comes. See every single thought that comes. There's much more to that, though, because what we've learned is that even if we're able to feel and express hate, or if hate is something that it's not totally repressed, we feel it. Um, we have now tools that will move that energy through much quicker. Because the idea is that even if we feel the hate, we're not fully acknowledging it in the mind. And that's what suppression or repression really is. If it's suppressed hate or somewhat suppressed or repressed, like like, just held in the body somehow. With rapid fire inquiry in members area, we run that thought, I hate her or him, after we connect it to the buried hate. Like, we have to really see that it's connected to it and then run it through in a rapid fire fashion. And then we also, on top of that, bring in inquiries that deal with the resistance to the hate as you're experiencing and expressing it. And that set of inquiries just transmutes the energy much faster than probably the way that you're doing it. So chances are you're actually either repressing and or suppressing hatred, and then also identifying with it. Because when we repress, we're identified with it. Like, on an unconscious level, I hate my dad. That's identification. But there's the repression of that, which is that there's other program that's against that hatred and that's trying to stuff that down. Those have to be made conscious. And it takes skill, and I'm not going to do it here. Can you imagine if I did that with you here and you don't have the other skills of KI? And what I'm going to be able to do is to fully bring that hate into awareness. But if you still have conditioning that I can't see because we're not talking to each other, that's going to thwart that expression of hatred as I get it to come up, you could just be stuck in it because I'm not able to talk to you and find out what's going on. So I could help you drum up that hatred, and then I click off the video because I can't talk to you. And then for 3 or 4 hours or 3 or 4 days, you're stuck in hate because of what I did. When if you would come to the members area, we'll show you some skills that will just help with that. Like, it's just much more supportive than YouTube. So, and by the way, I think we have a month-long free trial now for the members area. So yeah, if you go to the members area link, I'm going to put it in this video. Usually when you click on that, it takes you right to the sign up page. But this one's going to take you during the holiday season to a sign up page for our newsletter. And basically the discounts are going to come through to those who are on my newsletter. And by the way, all of my discounts come through that way. So if you're looking to, you know, do sessions, be in training, join the members area, you're better off joining my newsletter list through this link than I'm going to do, because otherwise you're not going to see the discounts.